What if everything you know about the moon landing is wrong? What if the truth is far stranger than we've been told? The moon landing on July 20, 1969 is undeniably one of the most iconic moments in human history. The images of Neil Armstrong stepping onto the lunar surface, leaving his famous front print in the dust, and the unforgettable words, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," have been etched into our collective memory. This moment was broadcast live to millions of people around the world who watched in awe as humanity achieved the unthinkable. For many, the Apollo 11 mission was the pinnacle of human ingenuity. A testament to the power of science, technology, and perseverance. It became a symbol of what humanity could achieve when united in pursuit of a goal. Welcome to Veil Uncover. For years, this moment has been celebrated as a triumph of human exploration, a reflection of mankind's relentless drive to explore the unknown. The Apollo program, which brought us the moon landing, was lauded for its technological advancements, the courage of the astronauts, and the undeniable accomplishment of landing on the moon. However, what if the truth behind this historic event is not as clear-cut as we've been led to believe? What if the moon landing, instead of being a shining example of human achievement, was actually something much more mysterious and complex? For decades, a growing number of conspiracy theories surrounding the Apollo 11 mission have persisted. These theories have been dismissed by mainstream sources as nothing more than baseless speculation, often disregarded as the ramblings of fringe thinkers. Yet, despite being ridiculed and ignored by many, these theories continue to thrive and provoke debate. The idea that the moon landing was staged has never completely gone away. What if this event, which many view as an indisputable fact, was not what it seemed? Could it be that the most famous achievement of the space age was a well-executed hoax designed to deceive the world? One of the most prominent arguments among skeptics is that the moon landing footage was filmed here on Earth in a controlled environment, perhaps on a sound stage or a secret location. These claims suggest that the United States government, in its desire to win the space race against the Soviet Union, resorted to a propaganda effort of monumental scale. After all, the space race was not just a battle of scientific minds, it was a geopolitical struggle for global dominance. To appear first in space, particularly with the symbolic and monumental achievement of landing on the moon, would offer unparalleled prestige. But is it possible that the US government was willing to go to such extremes? Could they have staged such a monumental event for the sake of winning the Cold War? While these theories might seem far-fetched to some, it is important to acknowledge that anomalies in the footage and photographs from the Apollo missions have been pointed out by numerous skeptics. These inconsistencies are not just the claims of a few isolated conspiracy theorists, but are rooted in specific aspects of the images and videos that continue to raise doubts. Let's start with one of the most famous criticisms: the shadow angles. In the photos taken on the lunar surface, skeptics argue that the shadows cast by objects and the astronauts themselves do not align with a single light source. On Earth, shadows fall in predictable ways based on the position of the sun. But on the moon, where the only significant light source would have been the sun, how could the shadows cast by objects in the scene appear at different angles? Could this be an indication that artificial lighting was used to create the scene? Another prominent claim revolves around the American flag planted by the astronauts on the moon. In the footage, the flag appears to ripple as if it were blowing in the wind. This is a particularly strange observation, given that the moon has no atmosphere and therefore no wind. Skeptics point to this as evidence that the flag's movement was created by artificial means, perhaps air vents or fans that were used to simulate wind in a studio setting. While some have tried to explain this by saying that the flag moved because of the astronauts handling it, the fact that it continued to flutter after being set in place seems highly unusual. There is also the lack of stars in the background of the photographs. On Earth, when we look at a clear sky at night, we can see countless stars, yet in all the photos taken during the Apollo missions, no stars are visible in the background of the moon's sky. NASA has offered explanations, saying that the camera's exposure settings were adjusted to capture the brightly lit lunar surface, which meant that the stars, much dimmer than the moon's surface, simply didn't show up. But to many, this explanation doesn't fully satisfy the suspicion that something is amiss. While these inconsistencies might seem trivial to some, they continue to raise important questions. If the most powerful nation in the world could land on the moon, why would they need to fake it? After all, the United States had the technological capability to send astronauts to space. So why would they go to the extreme lengths of staging such an event? Could there be something deeper at play? Could the reasons behind the moon landing be far more complicated and mysterious than we've been told? One of the most disturbing possibilities is the idea that the US government may have had other, more secretive motivations behind the Apollo missions. The Cold War was a period of intense rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union, and the space race was just as much about geopolitical strategy as it was about technological progress. The Soviets were making huge strides in space exploration, and the moon landing could have been seen as the ultimate propaganda victory for the US, a way to assert global dominance and prove technological superiority. But what if the motivations for the Apollo program went beyond simply winning the space race? What if the US government had something to gain by controlling the narrative of space exploration and keeping the real reasons behind the landing a secret? Could the truth behind the moon landing involve things that were never meant to be seen by the public? Were there things on the moon that the US government didn't want us to know about? Whether it was alien artifacts, ancient structures, or technologies far beyond our current understanding? What if the moon landing was not just a race to space, but part of a much larger plan to control the flow of information and maintain a dominant position in the global order? If this were the case, it would explain why the public was never given access to all the data and photographs collected during the Apollo missions. For decades, many of these records have been sealed, raising suspicion about what might be hidden from view. The questions surrounding the authenticity of the moon landing challenge the official narrative in ways that force us to reconsider everything we've been told about space exploration. If the moon landing wasn't a hoax, then what exactly was the US government hoping to accomplish by sending men to the moon? Why were there so many inconsistencies in the photographs and footage released to the public? Was there something on the moon that they didn't want us to know about? Something so extraordinary that it could have changed the course of human history? As we begin to peel back the layers of the official story, we start to uncover a much more complicated and intriguing picture. The questions that arise from examining the evidence are not easily dismissed. The inconsistencies in the footage, the secrecies surrounding the mission, and the larger geopolitical context all suggest that there may be much more to the story than we've been led to believe. Could the real reasons behind the moon landing be far stranger and more mysterious than we ever imagined? The truth behind the Apollo 11 mission is far from clear. Whether it was a groundbreaking achievement or a well-constructed narrative, the moon landing continues to captivate the imagination of millions. But as we dig deeper, we must ask ourselves, what if the official story is just the beginning? What if the real story of the moon landing is something far more extraordinary than we could ever expected? What if the evidence is staring us in the face and we've just been too blind to see it? The official footage of the moon landing has been shown millions of times across television screens, in documentaries, and on the internet. It's been played again and again, celebrated as the greatest achievement in human history. Yet, despite this overwhelming exposure, certain anomalies continue to raise serious questions about the authenticity of the event. With the advent of modern technology and a more skeptical public, these questions have grown more insistent as people continue to look at the moon landing footage with a critical eye. What if, in all the celebrations and national pride, the truth about the Apollo missions has been hidden in plain sight all along? Let's take a closer look at some of the most compelling and puzzling inconsistencies that have caused many to doubt the official narrative. Some of these are technical issues that can't be easily explained away, while others are simply questions that remain unanswered after all these years. And as these inconsistencies accumulate, it becomes harder to ignore the possibility that something is amiss. One of the most frequently cited discrepancies is the lighting and shadows in the moon landing photos. Skeptics argue that the shadows in several of the most iconic images do not match the angle of the sun, which should have been the only significant light source on the moon's surface. In photographs taken on Earth, shadows fall in a predictable manner, influenced by the angle and intensity of the light source. When the sun shines on an object, the shadow falls in a direction based on its position in the sky. But in some of the Apollo 11 photos, the shadows appear inconsistent. They fall at angles that defy logic, with some shadows casting in one direction and others appearing to go in completely different directions. How can this be? If there's only one light source, the sun, why would shadows behave so unpredictably? Some have suggested that this could indicate that the photos were taken not on the moon, but in a studio, where multiple light sources were used to create the illusion of sunlight. The use of multiple lighting sources could explain why shadows behave in such unusual ways. Of course, NASA and its supporters have consistently defended the authenticity of the photos, asserting that the lighting on the moon is different from Earth's due to the lack of atmosphere and the unique conditions of the lunar surface. They claim that the moon's surface is incredibly reflective, which could cause the light to bounce in ways that create odd shadow patterns. But this explanation doesn't sit well with many critics who argue that this should have been considered and corrected at the time the photos were taken, especially given the careful attention to detail NASA is known for. Another issue that has been raised involves the American flag that was planted on the moon. In the famous footage, the flag appears to be waving, which is highly unusual given that there is no wind or atmosphere on the moon. On Earth, wind causes flags to flutter and wave, but on the moon, there is no air to move the flag in such a way. Skeptics argue that the flag's movement could be a clear indication that the footage was filmed in a controlled environment, perhaps on Earth in a studio where fans or air vents could have created the illusion of wind. Critics point to the way the flag ripples when it is set into place as evidence that the scene was staged. The flag's movement appears to persist after the astronauts have finished adjusting it, suggesting that the flag was manipulated in some way, potentially with artificial means. NASA has explained this apparent movement, claiming that it is simply a result of the flag being manipulated by the astronauts when they planted it in the lunar soil. According to NASA, the flag was folded and creased, and its subsequent rippling was simply the result of the astronauts' actions in handling it. However, this explanation has not satisfied many critics, who argue that the movement of the flag is far too dramatic for something that should be static on a lifeless lunar surface. If there is no wind, how does the flag appear to ripple and flutter? This continues to be one of the most heavily debated aspects of the moon landing footage. Perhaps one of the most frequently discussed anomalies is the absence of stars in the photos taken on the moon. When we look up at the night sky from Earth, we see a multitude of stars scattered across the heavens. But in all the photographs taken by the Apollo astronauts on the moon, no stars are visible. If the moon sky was as dark as the footage shows, with no atmosphere to scatter light, shouldn't we have seen stars in the background? The darkness of space, combined with the moon's lack of atmosphere, should have made the stars highly visible. Yet, not a single star appears in any of the Apollo 11 photos. NASA has offered an explanation for this. They claim that the camera exposure settings were adjusted to capture the bright lunar surface, which was highly reflective under the sunlight. Because of the exposure settings, the relatively dim light from the stars was not recorded on film. While this might seem plausible at first glance, some skeptics argue that this explanation doesn't entirely add up. After all, other objects in the photos, like the astronauts and their equipment, are clearly visible. If the exposure was set to capture the brightness of the lunar surface, wouldn't it also have captured the stars in the background as well? Could it be that the lack of stars in the photos is not simply a technical issue, but a sign that something else is going on? Something that has been hidden from the public for decades? Despite these apparent inconsistencies, NASA and its supporters continue to maintain that the moon landing was real, and that the anomalies can be explained by the unique conditions of the moon. They assert that the lack of stars, the flag's movement, and the shadow angles are all simply the result of the particularities of photographing in such an environment. According to this view, the moon's lack of atmosphere, the lighting conditions, and the technology of the time explain all the strange aspects of the footage. But for those who remain skeptical, the questions continue to pile up with no satisfying answers in sight. What if these anomalies are evidence of something much more significant, something that has been deliberately kept from the public for decades? Could it be that the inconsistencies in the footage are not simply the result of technical limitations, but rather part of a larger cover-up? If the landing was faked, what was the real reason behind it? Were there things discovered on the moon that the public was never meant to see? Things that could have rewritten our understanding of history, science, or extraterrestrial life? Could there have been evidence of ancient structures, alien technology, or other discoveries that were hidden away to maintain control over the narrative? For those questioning the authenticity of the moon landing, these questions persist. The official explanations for the anomalies continue to fall short of providing convincing answers, and as time passes, the questions only grow louder. There are still countless people who firmly believe that the landing was staged, not because of unfounded speculation, but because of the overwhelming amount of evidence that doesn't seem to add up. The question remains, what if we've been blinded by the official narrative? And what if the truth behind the moon landing is something far more complex, far more extraordinary than we've ever been told? What if the anomalies in the footage are merely the tip of the iceberg, and what lies beneath is a much darker, more secretive story that has been deliberately hidden from us? What if the moon landing wasn't just about space exploration, but about controlling information, about making sure that certain truths, certain discoveries, and certain events never saw the light of day? These questions continue to haunt the narrative of the Apollo missions, and they are questions that demand answers. As we continue to explore the strange and mysterious aspects of the moon landing, we must ask, what were they trying to hide? What if the moon landing was just the beginning and the real story has been hidden in plain sight all along. The moon landing is often seen as the culmination of humanity's quest for space exploration. It was heralded as the ultimate triumph, a feat of technology and human spirit that would inspire generations. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin took those famous steps onto the lunar surface, and with them, the whole world watched as mankind crossed a threshold that was once thought impossible. The US won the space race, outshining the Soviet Union, and the moon landing became a symbol of American innovation and technological supremacy. But if we step back and entertain a more cynical perspective, we begin to ask a deeper and more unsettling question. Was the moon landing really just about exploring space? Or was there something else, something hidden that the US government was really after? During the Cold War, the geopolitical tension between the United States and the Soviet Union was palpable, and space exploration became one of the arenas where these two superpowers could demonstrate their technological and political might. The moon landing, though celebrated as a scientific achievement, also served a propaganda purpose, a powerful statement that the United States had surpassed the Soviet Union in a race to conquer space. But what if the true motivations behind the Apollo missions were far more secretive than we have been led to believe? Was the landing on the moon a diversion? A distraction from a larger agenda that had little to do with exploration and more to do with what might have been waiting on the moon? Consider this. What if the United States didn't just want to beat the Soviets to the moon, but was also deeply interested in discovering or even covering up something that could radically change our understanding of history, science, and perhaps even extraterrestrial life? Many conspiracy theories about the moon landing revolve around the idea that NASA had knowledge of something on the moon that needed to be kept hidden from the public. Some theorists suggest that the Apollo program wasn't just about reaching the moon, but about finding something extraordinary that the world was never meant to know. From mysterious structures to signs of potential alien technology, the idea that the moon could hold secrets far beyond anything the public has been shown is an intriguing one. Some theorists argue that the moon landing itself was merely a front for a much larger, more secretive space program. One focused on alien encounters or perhaps the study of extraterrestrial technology. What if the real goal of the Apollo missions was to explore the moon for signs of alien life? Or perhaps even to examine what was left behind by a civilization far older than our own? The idea that there may be alien artifacts, ancient structures, or even extraterrestrial ruins on the moon is a theory that some believe has been deliberately kept from the public for decades. One of the most enduring conspiracy theories surrounding the moon landing involves the idea that the US government already knew about extraterrestrial life and had been suppressing this information for years. According to some, the moon landing was not a simple race to space, but rather a deliberate effort to investigate the possibility of life beyond Earth, to study alien technologies or structures that had been left on the lunar surface. The idea that the government has been hiding the truth about alien life has gained considerable traction, especially with the rise of UFO sightings, declassified government documents, and other revelations that hint at a deeper, more complex relationship between humanity and extraterrestrial entities. If this theory holds any weight, it would explain why the US government has been so tight-lipped about the specifics of the Apollo missions. Some argue that the complete set of photographs, films, and data from the Apollo missions, especially the lunar landings, have been kept hidden for decades. Why, after all these years, are we still not allowed to see all the footage, images, and data gathered by the astronauts? What could be so damaging to the official narrative that it has been suppressed, locked away from public view? Were the images and recordings taken on the moon so revealing that they could disrupt society, challenge our understanding of the universe, and even alter the global power dynamics? If the Apollo missions did indeed uncover something significant on the moon, whether alien artifacts, ancient ruins, or evidence of extraterrestrial life, the US government would have had a powerful incentive to suppress this information. The public's reaction to such revelations could have been chaotic, an existential crisis, a complete shift in the way we understand our place in the cosmos. Governments, particularly in the Cold War era, may have feared that revealing the truth would undermine their authority, create social unrest, or shift the global balance of power. Instead of allowing the public to know the truth, they may have preferred to keep things hidden in order to maintain control over the flow of information. The question of why we haven't seen all the footage or images taken on the moon remains a central issue in the debate over the authenticity of the landings. Some theorists believe that the complete archives of the Apollo missions, which should include detailed photographs, videos, and scientific data, have been locked away by NASA or other governmental agencies because they contain information that would challenge the established narrative. Was there something on the moon, whether it was evidence of ancient structures or artifacts of unknown origin, that was deemed too dangerous for the public to know? Were these discoveries so groundbreaking that they had the potential to shake the very foundations of human understanding? And if the government really has this information, why has it been kept secret for so long? The official explanation for the lack of transparency is often that the Apollo missions simply didn't uncover anything of major significance beyond scientific data about the moon's surface. Yet, for many, this answer falls short. The sheer scale of the Apollo program, the immense resources invested, and the public scrutiny should have resulted in a far more comprehensive release of information. If the missions were so successful, why are there still so many secrets? What was the US government really after when it launched the Apollo missions? Was it just about landing on the moon? Or was it something deeper? Something far more strategic and secretive? One possibility is that the moon landing was a cover-up designed to distract from or obscure a larger space program focused on discovering or researching something much more extraordinary. The idea that the Apollo program was just the tip of the iceberg, a carefully crafted public spectacle designed to hide the true mission, is a theory that resonates with many who are skeptical of the official story. Could it be that the true objective of the Apollo missions was not just to show off American technological prowess, but to uncover or hide information related to extraterrestrial life, technology, or ancient civilizations on the moon? As we consider the potential for hidden truths, we must ask, what if the moon landing wasn't the end of the story, but only the beginning? What if the discoveries that were made on the moon were so significant that they've been deliberately hidden from us for decades? The idea that the moon landing was merely a distraction to conceal more profound truths about humanity's place in the universe is both unsettling and fascinating. Could it be that the greatest achievement of the 20th century was merely a smokescreen for a much larger, more mysterious story? One that we're still waiting to uncover? The moon landing may have been one of the most celebrated achievements in human history, but it could also be one of the greatest cover-ups in human history. What if the real story behind the Apollo missions and the moon landings is far more extraordinary than we've been told? The secrets hidden on the moon, the mysteries surrounding the Apollo archives, and the suppressed information about extraterrestrial life all point to the possibility that we have only scratched the surface of what was discovered during the Apollo missions. As we continue to explore the secrets of the moon landing and its aftermath, the question lingers. What are we really being kept in the dark about? Could the discoveries made on the moon be something so profound that they've been kept hidden to maintain control over the global power structure? Only time will tell if the truth will ever be revealed. But for now, the story of the moon landing remains a mystery, one that may be far more significant and far-reaching than we ever imagined. Thanks for watching another deep dive into the mysteries they don't want you to uncover. If today's revelation sparked new questions in your mind, don't forget to like the video, share it with a fellow truth seeker, and subscribe to The Veil Uncover for more investigations into hidden history, forbidden knowledge, and the secrets behind our world. Drop a comment below with your thoughts, because here at The Veil Uncover, we believe that the truth is out there and it's time to question everything.